Okay, I just want to say thank you, Saul, for being with me here today, recording this for our Me to We Resiliency storytelling. I really kind of want to know, what does resiliency mean to you? I know that you have a law enforcement background, so you must have so many stories.
Yeah, it's well, to start off, resiliency or resilience in general, it's kind of become a buzzword today. We it's used a lot. It not that it's not important, but um, we kind of have to be careful about how we do use it and what it actually means. So for me, when people hear or talk about resilience, they usually talk about, dealing with something, an issue or a problem or an incident or whatever, and then kind of bouncing back, right? And I actually don't agree with that. I actually think more resiliency is more about responding and adapting rather than reacting. And what I mean by that is that it's more about not going back to stasis. It's more about learning from whatever the event or incident or whatever it is was or is, and then adapting to that new reality. And quite honestly, in my world, if you haven't seen the news in the past 2 years or even more, we've been dealing with COVID. We've been dealing with the George Floyd murders, um, defunding, refunding, riots, reimagining policing, having issues with recruiting and retention, losing police executives because they're sick of it, quite honestly, having issues of hiring new people because who would want to come into a place like an industry like this right now? So when I hear resilience, I giggle a little bit because I'm like, I'm still here. And we have a lot of people in the industry that still are, but I always bring it back to that learning kind of module, right? That it's not just I react to this and I go back to my normal being. It's what did we learn? And I think um, in the policing world, I think you've seen a couple different reactions to some of like the reimagining or not, I hate the word defunding, but like reallocating how funding is used in a police department. You have one school of thought that is very cross my arms. No, we're right. We've done this forever. You don't know what you're talking about. This is stupid and whatever. And then you have the other extreme of I'll just change whatever you want and oh my God, I'm so sorry, whatever. And and the reality is that the right thing to do is somewhere in the middle of all of that. And people are angry and raw, and those emotions are affecting how things are being made, but not a lot of times the long-term effects of decisions that are being made in kind of a knee-jerk reaction are gonna potentially going to cause problems later. And so resiliency to me in that lens, looking at it through that kind of lens, is more about understanding what the problem is, and to use Stanford stuff, right? Taking kind of a design thinking approach to this, an innovative look, um, understanding who your customers are, what the customer base is, similar to like business, right? And if you look at policing, our customer is the community, and the other stakeholders in that as well are like business owners, people that come and visit or play in your city, and all of the things that have to do around that. But also in that is employees of the police department, both sworn and professional staff, and everybody else that's involved in all of this kind of thing. And so, um, for me, to bring it sort of back to your initial question, resiliency is really about how we learn and adapt to whatever the issues are today.
Yeah, I agree. And funny enough that you mentioned that about bringing it back to, lead and the Stanford thinking, because through all these interviews, these recordings for storytelling, that's exactly what it's come out to be. Is these stories have been, okay, here's what I faced, but here's what I created out of that. Here's what
Mhm.
I overcame and just grew to accept. So you're right. It wasn't just, okay, rewind, go back to kind of how I was before. It was, this is an opportunity for growth, and this is an opportunity to maybe create something or design something that's going to help myself or others. And that has been almost every story that we've had. And I feel like that is a theme amongst, leaders, through the Stanford program. And I love that. And I agree that the change always exists somewhere in the middle. And there's got to be a gray area where, okay, this should be our focus and we can kind of make something lasting happen versus, one extreme or the other. But I do agree with you about resiliency being that need to adapt and change and figure out, okay, this is my new normal, right? We all say that when something big happens, this is our new normal. Just
Yeah.
like with the
Yeah.
pandemic, I don't think anything's ever going to be exactly like it was before. I think we've learned to pivot. I was just talking to a local entrepreneur today. In fact, I'll give him a shout out. It's Alpha Coffee is amazing here in Salt Lake City. So if you're ever around here, and he was talking about the pivot that he had to make during COVID to stay successful. And a lot of that was, doing the door to door delivery or just
Mhm.
standing outside. Here's your cup of coffee. So, and I think overall, and you've probably seen this too, people are more resilient than they give themselves credit for to overcome and adapt and change and create new things. So, do you have any examples of that either in your life or just that you've seen where you're like, wow, this makes a lot of sense?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things when you're talking about that. I mean, nobody wants to be the case study in, take out your Palm Pilot or take out your Blockbuster card, right? And these are companies that were resilient in a bad way, right? They didn't change, they didn't adapt. And so, I think in my world, nobody really wants to be that police agency that's not changing and innovating. And it's weird. I always it's funny to me in a way because I always say that, there's two things that cops hate the most. One is change, and the other is when things stay the same, right? And I actually would argue that that's not just a police thing. I think that's a human thing.
Yeah.
And so that, that resonates with me. And also what's interesting is in my industry, we're constantly changing. Laws are changing, policies are changing. I mean, there was a time, this is before my time, but we used to not have Miranda. There was a time where we didn't
Yeah.
read those, you have the right to remain silent, da 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 da. It wasn't that long ago. Like it was in the 80s.
Yeah.
Um, and when that happened and we were required to tell these bad guys that you don't have to talk to me, cops were like, well, that's it. I guess we're never going to catch criminals anymore. And now I grew up in policing. That's been part of my job. And it's
Yeah.
just one of the rules in the game. And we have to adapt and move on, and do these things. And we see it all the time. We saw it with body worn cameras. There's a
Mhm.
big fight. Initially, it was like, whoa, hey, you're going to be watching everything I'm doing. And now, I mean, my cops, don't want to go, they don't want to start their shift without one because it saves them, right?
Yeah.
And I remember a long time ago, there was a time when, well, this had to do with body worn cameras, but one of the very wise sergeants once told me, how do you think the old guys felt when they got issued radios for the first time that they could carry on their bodies? And I was thinking, well, they must have thought it was amazing. That's the best thing ever. And he said, no, they hated it. They didn't want it. They only wanted the radio in their car. And because they didn't want somebody calling them anytime they want, telling them how to do their
Mhm.
job, where to go. And it just blew my mind. I was like, wow, anytime there's change, there's those two kind of camps, right? I don't
Yeah.
want to change. Everything's fine. This is good. We know the way. And then let's just change. Oh my God, we have to change because that's what they're saying. Right. And again, it's, kind of in the middle. But today, I don't have a police officer today. I mean, I have some of I know I sound like an old guy, but some of the younger officers, they won't even start their shift or they'll turn in a car when they do their inspection of a vehicle. If the computer doesn't work in the car, they'll turn the car in, even if there's no other car to take. And the car works fine. The
Yeah.
computer doesn't work. And my mind, I'm like, what do you need the computer for anyway, right? I mean, it has maps on it and has it's got all the information you need. So I tell people, do you remember this? Like you can also use these and just write things down, right? But that I think to go back to what you said, we are way more resilient. We can handle um, mental and physical stress much more than you ever think.
Yes.
And I look back to, hat tip to like Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, right? And that book and his whole way of being about choice and choice theory. And then more modern, another hat tip, uh, what's his first name? I'm losing his first name. There's a Navy SEAL, Goggins is his last name, and he talks about the ability in your mind to be able to, basically he's an endurance athlete now, like 100-mile road races running, and you can say, yeah, okay, leg, I understand that you hurt, but you're fine. We're going to keep going. Just shut up. And you just keep going, right? And it's that mentality that you have way more. I forget, I'm going to screw up the percentages, but he was saying when you feel like you've got nothing left in the tank, you have about
Yeah.
60% more.
Yeah, it's so true. And so funny. I'll tell a quick story, and then I know we have to wrap up because I could talk like this all day. But I often get told by either friends or coworkers, "I can't believe you were in the military. I could never do that." And I always say, I love hearing you say that because let me tell you, yes, you can. Because I thought the same thing. I was this tree hugging hippie from Oregon, grew up in Oregon, never even fired a weapon in my life. Saw a commercial for the Air Force, and I told myself, I could do that. I need to pay for school, and I'm living in a small town I'm ready to get out of. And I did
Yeah,
it. Was I scared? Yes. Was basic
sure.
training. I have many moments during basic training, like, what am I doing? But I love getting to tell people now you can do it. And so that kind of taught me to do that so many more times and repeat that process in my life. You can do it. It's scary, yes, but you did that, so you could do this.
Yeah.
So I totally agree. Yeah, when you feel like I'm broken and I'm done, there is so much more that you can give. And I think a lot of us with that military law enforcement training, we were just forced to face that.
Yeah, but there were people that didn't make it through the training. I mean, it's
That's
so
true.
it takes a different breed, and I actually love what you're saying because um especially when we're talking about I have two daughters. I have my son's in the middle, so I have an older daughter and a younger daughter, and they're all adults. But I- it never occurred to me until I had girls how kind of stuck um, they could be if they're not prodded and told, no, you can, right?
Yes.
And I remember there was a video that one of the younger daughter's teachers, I don't remember what it was, what class or whatever, but basically they were it was a video of a classroom, I think it was either Israel or London. I don't remember, but they brought in a firefighter, a fighter jet pilot, a doctor, and something else. There was four of them, and they all had their stuff on. Like the fighter jet pilot had the helmet, and
Mm,
the firefighter, that was the other one. The firefighter had a helmet on and all their gear, all their stuff, and they walked in and they were like, okay, oh, and they had the kids draw them before they showed up. So the
wow.
kids all drew a doctor and they drew a police officer and a firefighter and whatever. And then they came in, and when they took their stuff off, they were all women. And
Wow.
all the kids they drew men when they drew a doctor and they drew a so it warms my heart when you say, no, I can. And it's like, no, it doesn't matter race, religion, sex, creed, whatever.
Yeah.
If you have that resiliency and that drive, um, that's what's going to take you to the next level. But then there is a fear. I mean, we could talk about this forever. There's a fear component in that as well, right? Of the psychology behind fear and how that can kind of hold you back, or it can push you forward. And what is that fear? Is it fear of being embarrassed? Like public speaking sometimes is more a fear of looking like an idiot, right? Or sounding stupid or saying something dumb than it is actual fear. Like, what is the fear? The fear is you're not going to die, right?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
not that fear, but it's similar. It feels the same. Something anyway. We could
Yeah.
we could go on forever about that, but
No, yeah, I
yeah,
love it. I really could. We could have a whole presentation here, right here, a couple hours to share with
yeah,
everybody. But I really appreciate it. Just this little snippet. And I love that you're going to be there live talking during Me Too We. I will be there. I'm certainly going to look out for your presentation because this was just so wonderful. So thank you for giving me the time and being here to share your story or part of your story. I appreciate it.
Sure, of course.